What's going on, guys? Aaron Guyette, Master Coach and Education Director with LivingFit. And this is the LivingFit Show. And I have the incredible pleasure of having my good friend, Mike Ranfone, on today. We're going to talk about all things, mainly how East Coasters just don't really care about your feelings. That's going to be the main thing that we're going to, no, I'm just kidding. No, but Mike and I, we've been friends for a long time. I've had the pleasure of learning a ton from him. So hopefully we can learn a little bit from him today. Usually kind of want to start it off with, this question: how in the heck did you get into fitness?
Well, I think it started, primarily just the way that I grew up. Like we were constantly active. It was like the quintessential: you go out, you play games, you figure out, you self-organize. You come in when the street lights come on, and as soon as organized sports is an option, you do all of them, and you try to extend that quality or that aspect of your life as much as possible. So I feel as though I'm a lifelong athlete. I always like to compete in many different domains, but playing high school sports and then getting the opportunity to play in college definitely created a focus around fitness. And then, through injuries and the competitive nature of collegiate sports, I became enamored with strength and conditioning. At this time, 20 something years ago, at this point, it was an emerging field. So it really took my interest. When I had the opportunity, I ran with it professionally.
Yeah, and so did you? Because I know right now you've got Ranfone Training Systems, right? RTS. You got the gym, and for those that don't know, where are you located? How would they get hooked up if they're in your area? I'm sure we've got a couple of people that are probably right around your neighborhood.
Yeah, so I'm physically located in Hamden, Connecticut. It's outside of New Haven, but we do a ton of online stuff. Obviously that was greatly helped out by the pandemic. Oddly enough, we've been doing online training because of our athletic populations. We've been doing online training for probably 7, 8 years at this point. And then when we had to scale digitally, luckily enough, we had that infrastructure already in place. So for us to make that pivot wasn't hard. But yeah, so I have clients from California to Hong Kong to wherever, but our brick and mortar is in Connecticut.
Nice, and I guarantee there's people listening right now that are like, oh man, you're right around the corner, so they could totally check you out, especially if as they continue to listen and learn a little bit more about you. But you didn't start right with that brick and mortar. You didn't start with the gym model. You didn't start with all that stuff. How did you end up there, and where did you come from?
Yes. So right after school or college, I got an internship at Yale. So that was my first gig as a strength and conditioning coach at the collegiate level. And I was there for a few years, and then I went back to school for manual therapy. And that's also when I kind of segued into consulting, working with area teams. New Haven is densely populated with college and high school sports. So when I got out of the university level, it was pretty easy for me to get some attention and get some clients right off the bat. So it was easy for me to go back to school, have a part-time job, and also do consulting with local teams.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met you, we were sitting around a table and you introduced yourself and you're like, oh, I wander around the halls of Ivy League schools and do finish their math problems for them. I'm a janitor. I
Yeah.
freaking loved it. So great. But I mean, the funny part is you were surrounded and in this whole Ivy League school kind of circuit as your, startup, right? Coming out of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, the janitor thing wasn't. Strangely enough, I think Dr. Andy Galpin was a janitor at his school. He just didn't wander the halls and finish math problems. So,
My entry level position was basically a custodian at Yale. So,
right, just
as an intern strength and conditioning coach, you basically just wipe the floors down.
yeah, exactly. But you've been able to. I would probably say that you are one of the, if not the most well networked person I know personally in the fitness industry, because you've been able to rub shoulders or rub elbows with so many different strength coaches and teachers, educators, PhDs, what you name it. I can usually say, hey, do you know this person? You say yes. And then, hey, do you want an intro? Right. It's basically how that works. And what would you attribute that to? Is that because of where you started, or is that something that was intrinsic to who you are? Or how did that work?
Primarily, I believe it's because I was always the consummate consumer of education and knowledge. And 20 years ago, when continuing ed really wasn't such a formalized thing in the industry, you had to go out and find sources. So besides looking at books and a couple of websites, 20 something years ago, I just made emails and phone calls and really pursued people who I thought could help me in my pursuit of becoming a better coach, a better professional. So a lot of it was probably just based around the idea that there wasn't as much demand that was going on 20 years ago, and I was able to kind of network. And when I opened up my facility, the first thing I wanted to do was host education and be a center of influence in that regard. So I was able to get guys like Charlie Weingroff and Stu McGill and Dan John in here and really become like a hub of education, not only for myself but to educate my staff. So it was always on the forefront of my mind of continually evolving and getting better, so that I could always have a new pursuit that was in sight.
Yeah, I love the fact that you just continue to be this lifelong learner. But then I think there comes a time, and either it ebbs and flows in seasons, or maybe it sort of overlaps or whatever, where obviously you have enough education, probably maybe even too much, right, in some areas or whatever. Can you have too much? I don't know. But you have enough education where then it's, to empty your cup, right, so to speak, as the Buddhist story goes or whatever, so that you can fill it again. Obviously, you've been teaching, and not just in a coaching capacity, not just in an online training capacity, whether it's through the program or through RTS or any of the things that you're dabbling in, but actually like on circuits, if you will, for certain people. I mean, one of my favorite encounters with you or experiences with you, and this is after I got to know you as a friend, was actually learning from you in FRA. And I know that was for a season, but functional range assessment, and really being able to glean good science, and then meet, Dr. Michael Chivers and Dr. Andrea Spina and all those. How did you get into that? And was it just by the nature of networking and then kind of ending up there? Or was that a chosen thing, or how did that work for you?
Well, at the time when we were doing a lot of continuing ed in-house and bringing guys in, part of it is actually vetting people that you want to come in so that you can either represent their work in your facility and being extensions of them. So I made a connection with Dr. Spina really before FRC was a thing. So I reached out to him and I was peppering him with questions. And he said, listen, I'm starting this thing. And it was like 5 months away. He goes, if you want, come up to Toronto and take my first FRC course. So to my knowledge, I was the first American to get certified in FRC. And I was the first American host site to have FRC at my place in a public venue. So that was just kind of the natural process of reaching out, networking, asking questions, and really being a lifelong learner. So I was very fortunate to meet Spina and then Dr. Chivers, and we had a very good rapport. And then we were, I was in the mix of developing some of their courses and some of their curriculum. And then I had the opportunity to teach for them, which was awesome. And honestly, at the time, I just had too much on my plate, and other things were starting to suffer. And, I think life balance is kind of a unicorn, but I was definitely out of balance. And that's when I had to kind of eliminate some things on my plate and really focus on, other endeavors that I had going on.
Yeah, exactly. I often say balance is bullshit. But if your marriage is suffering and you want to have a good marriage, probably should turn some things off so that you can have a good marriage, or whatever it is, right? Kids and things like that. Yeah. And obviously for me, it's about priorities. So you said Hong Kong, you have a client in Hong Kong, you have clients all over the world. And are these these are clients that are coming to you for just basic, the Ranfone training systems sort of training, or is this like a different stage or different kind of level of training that they're getting from you?
Yeah. So what we were able to scale digitally was our how we would work with a one-on-one person in person, and this is something that was really developed by way of working with athletes in a remote situation, whether they're going off to college or playing pro, and you don't get access to them year round, but they still want some of the services that you provide. So what they're getting, what most of these clients are getting, is essentially the pillars of our work: training, nutrition, accountability, lifestyle, stress management. It's really hard to sequester one of those things without losing some of the integrity of the program itself. So it is our best shot at delivering as much as we can within the timeline or the constraints that the end user might have. But it is highly dedicated to an individualistic approach. It's definitely going to be scaled to the individual of what they need. And a lot of my clients and a lot of people on our roster are actually, in the industry. So we have a lot of gym owners. We have a good amount of personal trainers or chiros and PTs that are looking to either really work on themselves or backfill some of the educational gaps that they have or services that they could use to better round out their service structure themselves. And I'm very honest and transparent about this. Like, if you're in industry and you don't take away and extract as much value from what I'm doing for you and learn how to monetize it, you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice. And I'm not trying to say what I do is the best, but if you can take an element and then scale it to your own accord and make it something that your clients can benefit from, then that's wins across the board. And that, at the end of the day, is what I care about.
Yeah. And so is this the program? Like that's the name of it, the program?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The program.
And first of all, I just think of the film when I think of that.
Homage to that. Yes.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah. So so talking about is this a certain amount of weeks? Is this a lifelong thing? Is this until they kind of get their aha moment? How does that play out?
The initial or the entry phase of the program is 4 months. And obviously we'd love for people to stay with us after that. But our intent is to graduate you out in 4 months with all the skills, the qualities, and knowledge so that you have a certain level of proficiency and a certain level of certainty that you can do this on your own. And that's based on the end user's goals as well. So we have people convert on the back end and say, hey, I just want training now, or I just want nutrition, or I just want this. And that's cool. But in the beginning, we want to give you everything so that you can make an informed decision about moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, let's say they just want, business coaching or consulting or whatever afterwards. You can sort of layer it in and create that value add for that, and then there's a certain price point that comes with that, or is it a monthly thing, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's funny. So the gym owners that I work with and or people in the industry that I work with, I first try to convey the idea that if you're lacking, your business is lacking as well. Your business is just a reflection of your own behaviors. So the first thing that they realize is that when they invest in themselves, everyone wins. And there's a trickle down effect. So yes, they have business questions. Yes, they have financial questions and investment questions. I say, cool. The best investment is the one that you're going to make into yourself and you're going to adhere to. So let's work on that for at least the first couple of weeks. And you can ask me business questions. Like, I don't nickel and dime people. Your time, my time, like it's all dedicated to you moving forward. So a lot of times when people come out of the program, they stay with some kind of personal investment, but then they want to see how they can actually develop the business structure or the direction to get them to where they want to be. But if they didn't start with themselves, it doesn't matter what your business looks like.
Yeah. And speaking of starting with yourself, so talking about you, when I first met you, I thought you were this stacked, swole guy, and then you kept always telling me like, no, this is not how I normally am. Like back in the day when you were, obviously playing football and all this stuff, you're saying how much you weighed and all these things, and And I was like, you look great, man. But then over the course of what it was a year, 2 years now, I've just watched like this. I think you have a problem. You have scoliosis of the muscles, and but I mean, I've just watched the progression, and man, what an incredible way to, I guess, maybe sell the program, which is you're talking about investing in yourself. Is it seems as if you are investing in yourself, and it shows. And you're doing the thing is, like, a lot of people think like, oh, I just gotta lift this program for 4 weeks or whatever. But like, I've watched a dedicated, and not that you weren't dedicated before, like clearly you were dedicated before, but this like reinvigorated version of already incredible discipline and dedication, and watching the transformation happen, or the formation happen, has been pretty rad, right, on Instagram. So what would be for the lay person, right? We have like 85% of our listeners, followers, or whatever. They're just trying to figure out this whole workout thing, just trying to figure out, how to move their body, how to not be sedentary, how to eat better, all that stuff. What is either a single piece of advice or a couple of things that you would give somebody on the get-go, just like you obviously have been able to do notably for yourself?
Oof, that's a great question. So here, I will bring you into like kind of a consultative process that I work with, because I just had two today, both remote based, and I spend a lot of time with people before they make the decision if they're going to work with us or not, because I don't want people to be visceral. I want people to feel like they have a good information base to go forward, right? Mm-hmm. So it usually comes down to two things that I'm looking for. I want to know what your goals are. And I really want to know what's going to drive you, right? So if you want to lose 20 pounds because you want to be fit for your high school reunion, cool. But if we ask that question again and again, do we get to a greater depth of drive? I had an individual that wanted to lose 40 pounds and, just because he wanted to be 40 pounds less. And then I was like, okay, cool. Why? And I kept on peppering him. And he said to me, because I'm 40, and when my dad turned 45, he died of a heart attack. And I don't want to die when I'm 45 for my kids. And I'm like, that's awesome. And we'll still lose the 40 pounds, but that's going to be your why going forward. So really understanding what's going to motivate you is the first thing. And then the second thing is, what is your problem? What is the constraint? What is the thing that will trip you up? Because inevitably there's going to be tough times. So can we forecast or get ahead of a situation where you're only going to be as successful until your next problem comes along, or until an unresolved problem emerges? So identifying those things really helps us clearly state what is true success and what is true failure. So having that clarity then sets us up for creating relevance, right? Like, relevance is everything to me. And to your point earlier about how you knew me and how you seen me kind of transition, maybe it's just my age, maybe it's just, the seasonality of maturation or whatever. But what I defined as relevance now compared to 2-3 years ago is significantly different. And that helps me say no, which is probably the best skill anyone can have.
As opposed to saying yes. Right. So correct. Thinking like, the next program, the next methodology, the next exercise, the next whatever, it's saying no to the things that are keeping you from what you need to be doing. Right.
And even on the micro level, like we rise and fall to our level of behavior, so, a couple of years ago when I had this epiphany that this is what I wanted, this is what was relevant, and this is what's necessary for me to do that, I said goodbye to a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of places, and a lot of opportunities, because it was either going to move me forward or farther away from what I really wanted, and saying no to cool things is tough, but it's the right thing. It's the right choice, but it starts with the things that we do every day, not staying up late, maybe not drinking alcohol, maybe not watching Monday Night Football, things of that nature that really does not allow you to live in congruency with what you said you wanted.
Yeah, I love that. And and obviously we could talk at length. So we'll try to keep this short, because I do want to hear about some of the things that you have coming up. But so what are some, what are some tactics or ways to sort of, I don't know, filter out the problems? Because, we think that the problem is that, I didn't get into the gym, but really the problem is that you sleep like crap. You make all
Eat
these
like crap.
other life choices or whatever that are shitty that inevitably, of course, that's going to edge the gym out. But really, if you could turn those things off, then the gym would just be right there and be easy, or whatever it is. So what are some, I don't know, tactics that you use or someone could use to try to understand or
Yeah.
figure this out?
Well, the first thing I think we have to talk about is acknowledging that a change needs to be made. So the precursor to any change is awareness. You don't wake up one day and say, I got to change. It's usually because it's come about by some negative thing or some positive thing that garnered the awareness for you to be like, wow, how do I stay away from that from happening? Or how do I move towards that happening more often? So creating the awareness about what we're doing and if it is actually, in fact, moving us forward or farther away from what we want. And that, to me, always comes down to tracking. People say they never have enough time, and that's usually bullshit. No offense, but that's usually bullshit. Everyone has the same amount of time, but people use that as like the scapegoat when really we don't have a time management issue. We have an attention management issue, right? That's why it's called paying attention, because you spend it. So if you have 2 hours of Netflix but have no time, no, you have time. You just self-chosen Netflix over going to the gym or food prepping or spending time with your kids. So I think it's just a matter of like if you looked at your daily schedule and looked at like, oh, what did I do for those 2 hours? Where did those 2 hours go? Oh, that's right, I was on Instagram. Like it might be a little bit shaming, but now you have the ability. You're from the vantage point of saying, you know what? I feel guilty about that. I'm never going to let Instagram make me feel that way again. And instead, I'm going to replace it with a book or meditation or whatever else that you want.
But what if you almost found the bottom of Instagram, though? What if you were almost to the
I have a good idea there. What the bottom of Instagram looks.
Oh, man. No, that's awesome. So, clearly, lifelong learner, always in pursuit, not only for yourself, but wins across the board. I love that. I constantly talk about, okay, what's the win-win-win? Let's find the win-win-win here. And instead of, in order for me to win, you have to lose, zero-sum mentality, right? Which usually begets a scarcity, right? Mentality or mindset. And that's going to crush you.
Which is so prevalent in our industry.
Yeah.
The 100%. Scarcity mindset.
100%.
Unbelievable.
So clearly wins across the board, continuing to develop out RTS as the brick and mortar, but even more so at scale, online. Now you have the program, pretty incredible, top with some incredible people, have a huge network, and continually investing in yourself so that you can invest in people that you care about, so that they can experience a win. What are some things that you have on deck? I know we talked a little bit before this talk, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into that because we just barely skimmed the surface.
Yeah. So kind of what's next is that we're obviously going to continue to do what we do at the brick and mortar. So RTS is my brick and mortar. Our online, the program is really a secondary business. It's developed to a point where I actually have to dedicate staff. So we're referring to that as RPC, Ranfone Performance Consulting. And over the course of especially the last 7-8 months through the thick of the pandemic, we learned some valuable lessons about how people are perceiving health. And typically health is a very ambiguous term. When someone brings up health in a consult, I'm like, well, what does that mean to you? Are we talking orthopedic health, cardiovascular health, mental health? What are we talking about? And no one really has a good answer because it's hard to really create an objective measure around health. And modern medicine doesn't do us any favors where health is just equated to the absence of sickness, which is kind of low bar to me, right? So one of our pursuits this year is to create another level of service on top of the program where we can start to really look at health internally, which hopefully will come to fruition relatively soon, because I just signed kind of a partnership with Inside Tracker, which is a leading blood analytics company. So they're going to be able to get some really interesting biomarkers done and relate that to the things that we are working on. So we really have this inside out phenomenon occurring from the end user standpoint of saying, hey, if I lose 20 pounds, does that fix, what could be a problem in 10 years? So the idea behind doing this is twofold. It's obviously to create a little bit more invested approach for the client, but also to extend the time horizon of which they're thinking about their health, their well-being, their fitness. Because you get to this point of middle age, and you're like, well, how much time do I have left? And how much can I have of this lifestyle? When does my quality of life start to drop off? So Inside Tracker combined with habit-based living kind of answers the question, well, how do I slow the aging process and extend the quality of life that I want to have in my 70s and 80s? So I'm extremely excited about that and the prospect of working with these guys, as well as some of the other medical concierge programs that we're going to be developing to take the position of proactive healthcare, which I think is largely missing in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Proactive is the key there, right? Everything it seems is reactive, even in the fitness industry, right? Definitely in the health and wellness and medical side, but even in the fitness industry, it seems to even be reactive. I mean, obviously there are some proactive people in there, but it's like, oh, I gained 100 pounds, so now I need to lose at least 50 of it, or whatever the case. So talk me through then, because clearly in the fitness industry, it's important to know like kind of our limits, whether you're a trainer, strength coach, clinician, any and all of those things as a piece to it. Like, this is where I can't tread. This is where I can tread. So now it seems like you're sort of bridging that gap, right? As you said. So how do you bridge that gap? When do you know when to do the handoff? How does that work? And then can trainers see the blood work and then be able to make decisions based off of that? Is that legal? How does this all work?
Yeah, well, it's going to come down to division of labor. So the way that we have set it up, the way that we're rolling it out to launch this program is that I have, myself as the head coach, the nutritionist, the programming that we do for habit-based formation for quality of life. But then on the other side of it, we do have a medical doctor and an MPH that is doing the blood analytics. So I'm not comfortable. I'm not qualified. So that's a very hard partition of what I'm doing versus them. But it also just lends itself to the team model. Like in most medical situations, the communication across disciplines is non-existent. So I'm able to communicate with the doctor, with the MPH, with the nutritionist, or all the other coaches or people on staff, so that we can figure out a very comprehensive plan, so that maybe we're looking at the same thing, but our vantage points are very different. And if we never communicate that, we don't know what the other person's seeing and their reason for their intervention. Because at the end of the day, the client's intention needs to be gapped, or the gap needs to be narrowed towards the intervention, which could be multifaceted or disciplinarian, by trait. So let's see what we can actually do with a team, rather than saying, oh, I know everything, we'll fix it with squats. You know what I mean? Well, maybe there has to be some kind, and like, I'm not against medication, like if they have to be on a statin, like, cool. Can we get them off a statin in a reasonable, timely fashion where there poses no risk to that person?
Yeah, I love that. It's very much the solution for wellness across the board. So fitness and medical and all this.
Yeah.
But that General McChrystal team of teams kind of model, right, where it's like breaking down the silos so that there's communication. Nobody has an ego and is saying, no, you don't get my information. I don't get yours. Whatever. We'll just do this here. And then what that leaves us with is just a really crappy end product. And if the end product is a human, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, dude, I love that. That's incredible. And so you said in a few months that's going to be hopefully live?
Yeah, well, all right. So we have a beta test that starts at the end of this month. So obviously when we roll out a new product or service structure, we have to test it. So we have about 35 people going through it at the end of this month, so that we can troubleshoot any of the, is communication on point? Is it done with the expectations that we've had? And again, measure against what we fall short on. So this is so that we can scale it to the point where, let's say every 2 months we can onboard 50 people in a very seamless manner, and also give them some confidence that they're in the right place.
That's awesome. And so when they onboard and when you do this beta test, is this just all technology leveraged, like through an app or through a website or something like that? Or is this in person, or is it both? Or
right now, the beta test consists of our in-house members, as well as some people that I have on a remote program, and all of it is going to be able to be scaled digitally. So, I'm looking at geographical restrictions as a non-factor here because of the tech that we have in place. So we have 3 different platforms that we utilize, so to make sure that communication cycles are there, communication cadence are intact, and also for the end user never to feel like they're on an island. Like, there should be no ambiguity in this. There should be never a time where people are like, well, what do I do? I'm living in the gray. So we can right the ship and get them back on track if need be, as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, the only thing that they would need to do is actually sign in or check in, right? Like have a presence there to be communicated to, right? But that's it. Yeah, that's incredible, because I think oftentimes, well, I mean, even the trainer, if the trainer doesn't know, oftentimes the trainer goes, oh, well, I can do that. And it's like way outside of his pay grade, way off, he shouldn't be doing that thing. So then he's just basically fumbling, shooting from the hip, doing magic that doesn't really actually work, or maybe it works. And that's even worse. If it works once, then he does it more and more and more or whatever. But
and that's kind of the cool thing, the way that we set it up, is that so the medical side has the medical information. Let's say the coach has the responsibility of the training, stress management, load management, things of that nature. And then those 2 people talk. So we do silo what dashboards they're privy to, but then they have to communicate to make sure that the treatment plan or the action items are living in sync.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we'll talk through a scenario where, if they didn't communicate, one could be doing, something that's going to be really detrimental to the health of their client.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if someone, let's just say, has high risk cardiovascular disease, and their nutrition is off, and they're pushing like cholesterol levels or inflammatory markers in their blood, is that the best way of going about long-term well-being? So, and the doctor might not even know that's a thing that could be caused by some of the training implementation. So for them not to talk and not to communicate is the greatest problem with what we have anyway. So this is so that the integrity of the program coexists amongst the practitioners.
Yeah, it's almost like you took the program model, right? The program that you do, set a goal and saw the problem, and now you're coming up with a pretty systematic and team-based high communication solution. It's pretty radtastic. Well, so as we finish each show, we finish it with the question, what is LivingFit to you? And clearly we could talk forever. But I know you have a schedule. I have a schedule. We have things that we got to do. So we'll probably have you back on, especially once this thing launches, and we'll be able to talk about the success and maybe even some of the pitfalls and things that you've been able to solve and whatnot with what you've got going on, which is pretty incredible. To include just more hearing about the program and what you're doing at RTS, which is awesome. So what is LivingFit to Michael Ranfone?
God, I mean, some of it is about no compromises to me. I think the hardest part of me getting older was, again, the ability to say no, but not feeling like I was making concessions on what I said I wanted, and making sure that I can still feel like, I'm 40 plus years old, but I can still get a good workout in. I can still go home, play with my kids, still have a very full business schedule, and live the life that I want without feeling like I'm missing out on something, and that could be, the places, the people, the things that I want to do. So I guess in a nutshell is like I still want to live on my own terms, and that will change, right? And and like at 40, I'm way better at reconciling that when I was at 30, and not trying to maybe hammer a square peg in a round hole kind of thing, but knowing where I can, like, what my access points of are success. So to me, I want to do this. I want to continue to pursue things. I want to enjoy what I do. I'm very curious still about like the things that drive me, because I don't think I'm there where I could be. So I know that's probably a roundabout way of saying that I just want to live to the fullest, but that's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. 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 And so living fit is not having compromises for where you're at right now. I love that, so that you can live the fullest life. Right. And I feel like that's it too. Like life isn't about just surviving. It's about thriving and living it to the fullest. And I love that. It's awesome.
And having a little bit more awareness about what that means. I think when you're young, like, cause you could do everything, nothing really has the same meaning to it. Right.
Yeah.
And as you get older and some of the opportunities or options go away, you just have to be more focused on the things that you can do. And when you can't do something, like, did it matter anyways?
Yeah.
So it's that peace of mind that what you're doing matters.
That's awesome. It's funny too, because when you're in your 20s, I call it the 20 stupid year old years, because you can kind of do everything, but really there's a lot of things you can't do. You just don't ever see it because you're not worried about not doing those things. It's so awesome. Yeah, I love that. Well, on that note, again, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on, Mike. I really appreciate our friendship. And although you're clear on the other side of the United States, I'll look forward to the moment where I could see you again and have you make fun of me. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, brother. Anytime. Get Marcus out here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.